Begin shortly.
Good morning, everyone. This is Debbie Royce, New York Liberty Development Corporation's Assistant Secretary. I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's meeting. Before we formally begin, I would ask that everyone please mute your line unless you're speaking. We'll begin today by taking a roll call of our directors to ensure we have a quorum present on the line. Please be so kind as to say present when we call your name. George Haggerty.
Present.
Mehul Patel.
Present.
And Kathleen Mize.
Present.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining today. And Acting Chair Patel, you can begin.
Great. Thanks, Debbie. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the New York Liberty Development Corporation for Monday, January 24th, 2022. Before we get started, I'd like to note for the record that I will be the acting chair for today's meeting. I ask that everyone please mute their phones until you're ready to speak, and anyone wishing to speak to please state your name before you begin. I'd like to note for the record that in accordance with current legislation, this meeting will be conducted by teleconference. I will also note for the record that the public was given an opportunity to comment on today's agenda item by submitting their written comments by 9:30 a.m. today, and no comments were received from the public on today's agenda item. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflicts of interest with respect to today's agenda item. If so, please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item. Do any of the directors have any potential conflict of interest to disclose? Hearing none, I would now like to ask Matthew Bray to present the only item on today's agenda, which, among other things, requests authorization for the refinancing of the corporation's revenue refunding bonds for the 7 World Trade Center project. Matthew, when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you, and good morning. Today, we are asking the board to approve the operative provisions, sale terms, preliminary official statement, bond purchase agreement, related documents, and related actions in connection with the sale and delivery of New York Liberty Development Corporation, to be referred to as LDC or the issuer, tax-exempt Liberty Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2022A, 7 World Trade Center Project, Green Bonds, to be referred to as the tax-exempt bonds, and New York Liberty Development Corporation taxable Liberty Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2022B, 7 World Trade Center Project, Green Bonds, to be referred to as the taxable bonds, and together with the tax-exempt bonds as the bonds, to be issued in an amount not to exceed $500 million and $25 million, respectively, for the benefit of 7 World Trade Center 2, LLC, or the borrower. The borrower has requested that LDC issue the tax-exempt bonds to refund substantially all outstanding principal of the $450,290,000 New York Liberty Development Corporation Liberty Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2012, 7 World Trade Center Project, or the 2012 bonds. The proceeds of the taxable bonds will be used to refund the remaining portion of the outstanding principal of the 2012 bonds and to fund the cost of issuance of the bonds. The proceeds of the 2012 bonds were used to refund prior bonds issued by the New York City Industrial Development Agency to finance a portion of the costs of the construction and development of the uppermost 42 floors of the 52-story building known as 7 World Trade Center, or the facility. The facility is owned by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which has leased it to the borrower pursuant to a ground lease, to be referred to as the ground lease. The bonds will be issued and secured under the provisions of an indenture of trust, or the indenture, between the issuer and the Bank of New York Mellon as trustee, or the indenture trustee. The bonds are special limited revenue obligations of the issuer payable solely from the trust estate under the indenture. The issuer will loan the bond proceeds pursuant to a loan agreement between the issuer and the borrower. This will be referred to as the loan agreement. And the borrower will deliver to the issuer, the indenture trustee, and the Bank of New York Mellon as collateral agent, or the collateral agent, a promissory note evidencing its obligations under the loan agreement, or the note. The borrower and the collateral agent will enter into a collateral agency agreement pursuant to which the collateral agent will authenticate the borrower's obligations under the loan agreement and the note, to be referred to as the obligation, as entitled to security granted by the borrower to the collateral agent, and Wells Fargo Bank as the cash management bank will also become a party to the collateral agency agreement. The bonds will be secured and payable from loan payments made by the borrower pursuant to the loan agreement and note. The issuer will also enter into the indenture under which the bonds are to be issued and secured. As security for the obligation, the borrower will grant a mortgage lien on the borrower's leasehold interest in the facility under the ground lease to the collateral agent. In addition, the obligation will be further secured by a pledge and assignment of all tenant leases and rents from the facility, a lien and security interest in all personal property of the borrower, a pledge and assignment of contracts relating to the facility, and funds or assets from time to time on deposit in certain reserve accounts held by the collateral agent. The collateral agent, the indenture trustee, Wells Fargo Bank as master servicer and special servicer, and Wilmington Trust as fiscal agent will enter into a servicing agreement to administer the obligation authenticated under the collateral agency agreement. The servicing agreement provides that the master servicer will administer the obligation until such time as the obligation is in default, at which time the special servicer will administer the obligation, and provides for the assignment by the indenture trustee to the master servicer and the special servicer of the sole and exclusive right, subject to certain reserved rights of the issuer, to take enforcement actions, to take or withhold approvals, and to exercise rights and remedies with respect to the loan and collateral documents. The issuer will also enter into a bond purchase agreement with the borrower and the underwriters for the initial underwriting of the bonds. The issuer is being asked to delegate authority to its officers to approve the maturities, prices, yields, and other terms of the bonds, which are expected to price in February 2022 and close in March 2022. In accordance with the attached resolution, you are hereby requested to approve a green bond framework as proposed by the borrower and designate the bonds as green bonds. Approve the terms and authorize the sale of the bonds. Approve the form and content of the preliminary official statement and various other bond documents in connection with the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds. And authorize certain officers and employees of the issuer to take all actions deemed necessary to accomplish the final sale, issuance, and delivery of the bonds. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Matthew. I'd like to remind everyone to please state your name before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to this item?
Mehul, this is George Haggerty. I have a question.
Hey, George, go ahead.
Hi. Just a quick one. I understand that we're refunding for $550 million a debt that's about 452, if I heard it, and another 25, leaving some. Is there new money being expressed here as well?
This is Matt Bray. No, there's not new money. The The amounts that were stated up to 500 and up to 25 were the amounts approved at the TEFRA hearing, but the actual numbers will probably come in lower than that, is what it looks like.
Okay, I got it. I didn't hear the up to part of it. Thank you for that. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Okay.
Great, thanks. Are there any other questions or comments from the directors? All right, then as noted earlier, we do not have any comment from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
Kathleen Mize, I approve. Motion to approve.
George Haggerty,
Is there a
second.
second?
George Haggerty, second.
Great. Great, thanks Kathleen and George. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, thank you. The motion carries. There being no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
George Haggerty moves to adjourn.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in today's meeting.
You got it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
And I'm going to
You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.